Italy. I'm half Scottish. My mom's Scottish and my father's from Naples. So I was thinking I'm quite a refugee. I'm the second generation of a person that went away from their country for whatever reason they went away. But in 2012, we started this project for a library in Lampedusa, and this is what I'm going to tell you all about. Of course, you can ask questions. So I'm the person that knows everything about the project. So if you want to know something, this is your moment to ask it, and interrupt me if you want. So this is the project, and Lampedusa is a place that you might know by name, but it's very far from everything. So that little black square you see up there, that's the point in the Mediterranean where Lampedusa is. It's much closer to the coasts of Africa than it is to the coasts of Italy. And it's a part of an archipelagus, and it's 3 islands. One is called Lampione, one is called Linosa, and one is called Lampedusa. Lampione is just a rock in the middle of the sea, and you can't live there. Linosa has like 80 people living on it. It's like paradise. It's a wonderful place. And Lampedusa is 12 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide, and there's 6,000 people residents of Lampedusa, and they're all white. This is, remember this. And so in 2012, there was a huge, in 2011 actually, we started talking about migration and about the problems of migrations because Lampedusa was filled for a political motive of migrants. So I didn't know this at the time because every project and probably everything we do in life has so many levels and so different, and every time we start doing something we have to make sure that all the levels of what we're doing are sort of harmonious with one another. So this project works because all the levels in some way talk to each other, but there's lots and they're all very different. At the beginning, when I started working on the project, I had no idea of migration, and my only concern was, oh, poor kids and the poor people coming, and I just wanted to help. I wanted to do something. And that put me in a position that I didn't know I was taking, but I was actually taking. So this is what I learned later. So the Italian politics had decided that they wanted their population to become scared about migration. So they blocked people going away from Lampedusa. Lampedusa is a stepping stone, so you pass through Lampedusa, you don't stop there. It's very small, and you can't actually, there's nothing to do there for you. So birds stop there on their migration, and fish stop there when they migrate from a sea to another, and men stop there because it's the closest place you can get. You can stop, you can drink, you can eat, and you get on your way again. You're a traveler, you have to go. When people are stopped in Lampedusa, of course, the numbers become very difficult to work with. So if there's 6,000 people living there and 10,000 people stop there, the population doesn't know what to do, and then so they were sleeping in the streets, and people had to give them things to eat, and it was winter and it was cold, so everybody was very anxious, and we were getting news on the news about people just living what's going to happen, and everyone was very anxious, and so I started phoning, and I wanted to know if there were special things for children, if they were doing special things for children, if there were special places where they could stay, or if they were just mixed up with the rest of the people. And I made my phone calls, and everything was Italian and quite funny. So some people just said, "Oh, we don't want you here, don't come." And I thought, "Oh, okay." So that was it. And then, well, of course, I'm an Ibby person, and I've been for a long time, and I've been waiting for a moment where Ibby could become practical for me, because I knew about Jella Lepman, and I loved her work. And I was going out to all these Ibby meetings where we said, "Oh, books are nice. Oh, books are lovely. Oh, we all like books." But I was getting a bit anxious to do something. So I thought, this might be the occasion. So I put a group of people together and I said, why don't we bring some books to Lampedusa? We just ask the publishers for books, put them in boxes, go there. Mine was at the beginning, I thought this could happen, but it can't actually. So I convinced them, and so we sat down and we said, what language books are we going to take? And someone said, oh, everybody in Africa speaks French because of French colonization. French books. Oh yeah, French books is good, but no, of course, some people in Africa don't speak French. Most people in Africa speak English. Oh, no, we can have some English books, okay. But what about Wolof, and what about Arabic, and what about... So it started to become really difficult. So then, I remember that moment because it was funny. I had read this book by Media Vaca. It's the story of Robinson Crusoe done without words. It's a fascinating book. It is in one of the collections. And I thought, if someone can tell Robinson Crusoe's story without words, we can probably bring books without words. And we started calling them silent books just because it was sort of poetic, I suppose. And so we said, great idea. How are we going to get these books? And of course, if you read Yella Letman's book, it was just a connection of things. And so we asked publishers all over the world to send us books without words from their collections. The first collection was without a date time, so they could, even books from the past could be put in the collection. Of course, there's some very famous silent books from the past, and we had them all in the first collection. And then the next collections have timing, so you can only select books from a time range that is probably 3 years. The books get sent in 3 copies, and one goes to Rome in this place called the Palazzo delle Esposizioni. They've got a big art library, and they have the whole selection of all the books that arrive, so you can go there to study or for research, or if you want to see them all in a bunch, you can go there and spend the day there and then look at them all. The second copy goes to the traveling exhibition that's been going around the world, and Liz is one of them. It's the best, and she can send it everywhere. And the third copy goes to Lampedusa. So the project is turned out at the end to be very good because it gives all the parts of publishing its rights. It gives editing and publishing its thing. Publishers have started to look at these books and they think, we can actually do silent books. And since we started in 2012, there's much more publishing of silent books. Before it was like a crazy thing to do, and maybe you'd have 1 or 2 in your catalog. But now publishers are getting really, they've loosened up in this, and they know it's something that they can do, and then they're quite happy to do silent books. So there's I hope Ibby Ireland has sent its books for the next selection. Have you? Have you worked Ibby Ireland? Anyway, there's a 4th edition of the silent book collection coming up, and we're going to present it in Bologna. So sections have been asked to send their best silent books in these 3 copies to Rome. And it's not really a selection. We put all the books in the exhibition. They all go around the world. But to give it a highlight in Bologna and have something to talk about, and also to have the fun of doing it, we have a sort of little jury in Bologna, and we sit down and we look at the books and we select the 5 best books. Then there's a nomination from Amnesty International, and there's a nomination from the Palazzo delle Esposizioni, and another nomination. Depends on the year. Anyway, this was the selection for the first set of books that arrived. And that was that one with the foot there is the Robinson Crusoe book that I was talking about before. And of course, Sam, that's been a classical silent book for years before we were even talking about it. And The Arrival is also one of the pillars of every exhibition on silent books. And this book that I brought here too, it's called Tout un monde, is a fascinating book. And The Snowman, of course. So that was the first honor list. And this one's the second one. As you see, so the book, silent books have this very particular thing that you have to get into the mood of understanding what the code you have to break is. So mostly we only have the title of books. Like for Korean books, we can't figure out the title. If you don't know the title, it's sometimes very difficult to understand the book. So people that love books and that can spend their time with books are able to open a silent book and pass the time with the book until they understand what the code to break is, what you have to do with that book, what the book is calling you to do. If a book is a good book, the code is inside the book and you can find it. If the book is a bad book, if you don't find the code, that means there's something wrong with it, and then probably something gone wrong in how they made the book. So that book there with the window is a very strange book, and we passed lots of time trying to understand where it was trying to take our imagination. We finally got there, and it's very interesting if you ever have it under your hand. It's a sort of play book where distance between the images is very, very far apart. So you have to connect it with your own imagination, but you have to find the one thing that connects the 2 pictures that you're looking at. It's a sort of game, and when you get at the end of it, you feel like read the Divina Commedia or something. It's sort of very intense. Or that book on the moon and you have it here in your collection is a beautiful book. It's just a book about beauty. So some books are just the texture of the paper and the quality of the pictures and how the idea came to an artist to do a book just about the moon. It's just something so poetical and so wonderful that it gets into a book and it becomes wonderful. This is the third edition, and this. While we go on, as I was saying, books change and they become more interesting, even on how they're made, and people love them more, and they have more impact on the public. Professione Coccodrillo was illustrated by an Italian illustrator. It was her first book, and maybe not either second or something, but it had a huge success. It was translated in lots of different languages. And it's the story of a crocodile that gets up in the morning, washes his teeth, does his usual thing, catches the bus, goes to the and does all the things that people do in a big city, and then he goes to work, and his job is being a crocodile in the zoo. So it's very funny because it goes all the way around. The Farmer and the Clown book is a book. It's a book that's been very important for the Lampedusa project, because we worked a lot on it and things happened over it. 10 years, while. So the traveling exhibition is going around the world, all over the place, and every time it stops somewhere, things happen, and it's during an Ibby congresses, you should actually come to a congress because they're very nice. People come up to me and say, you know what happened with that silent book? We did this, we did that. And it's very interesting to see how a project puts roots all over the world, and people do different things with them. And then so it all lines up to one idea and one thing, and everybody connects with the same idea. And it's very interesting that the exhibition has had such a big success, and everybody's having it all over the world. So the Library of Lampedusa is another level of the project. So we got to Lampedusa and we thought, we'll open a library, easy, give us a room. They said, here's a room. So we said, all right, we'll do this room. We put the books in the room, and we said, I thought, that's it. You do the rest. We gave you the books. We found the room. We can go. But that was just the beginning, and it took us 5 years to actually open a library in Lampedusa. And I had made lots of mistakes, and it's mistakes that you make when you have to make. It's not mistakes that you can avoid. It's mistakes that you make when you're working with communities. So I was talking about libraries and how you work with a library and how nice it would be to have a library. They didn't know what a library was. I mean, they knew the word, of course, because it's in Italian, but they'd never had a library on the island. So nobody was... I said something and they would say yes, but we were talking about two different things. So it was very difficult to communicate. And in a place where there hasn't been libraries or cinemas or theaters for 20 years, people don't know what other people are thinking. So communication is very, very difficult. And it can get very clashy too, because you talk to someone and you say, do you understand? And he says, yes. And you say, will you do it? He says, yes. And then as soon as you turn around, he doesn't do it. And you think, why? Didn't I convince you? And he says, yes, but I don't, he said, I'm too scared to do what you're telling me to. So I actually made my own idea of culture in Lampedusa. Culture is something that makes you aware that you're not scared of the next thing that might happen. When you don't have an idea of what the future might be, and you don't know where to find an idea of the future, you're so scared of anything that might change the present. So I was going there and saying, we'll open a library, kids will come here, they'll read stories, they'll change. And everybody would say, oh, nice, but they weren't thinking, oh, nice. They were thinking, go away, I don't want you here, you have to leave the island. So it was very frustrating, because I would go back after like 6 months and nothing had been done, like nothing had changed at all. So, but people that were coming to Lampedusa, because every year we went to Lampedusa for an Ibby camp. That's my next sort of battle thing. I would love camps to become international. Camps are just an invention, nothing much. But I said to people, why don't you come with me, because I need a hand in Lampedusa. So people would come, and it was all illustrators or writers or publishers, friends, people that knew and loved books. And I would say to them, just walk around the island, talk about books, and say the word library a lot, because they didn't have this word in their vocabulary. If any of you have ever had anything to do with boats, boats, they look like they're very close, and then you put another boat in the middle, because you can just push them aside and put another word in there. So they didn't know how to use this word, so I told everybody, just say, oh, I'm just going past the library and I'll come back later. Just say the word a lot. So people, now everybody knows where the library is, what it is, and what it does. But before, they didn't have that word and they didn't know how to use it. So these people that come to camps are just fantastic. I love them all. They're just crazy people that put themselves on a train, on a plane, on a boat, and reach that really far away place and get there with an imagination. And I sort of destroy it for them. So that's not very nice of me. But you connect Lampedusa to migration and migration to black people, and you make this picture in your head that Lampedusa is a place where it's full of black people that are needing of our help. And so you think, I'm a good person, I'm going to go there. But that's not at all what the question is. So, and it happened to me, so I say it with every conscience of the thing might happen. I went to Lampedusa thinking, it's right on the border, it's probably full of kebab places and a sort of mixed Italian and African situation, but it isn't. Lampedusa is an totally Italian place. And migration is a very difficult thing to understand. Nowadays, migration is the new war. We're fighting a war over migrants, and migrants are the only people that are actually losing the war completely. In Italy, the situation is very, very dramatic at the moment. Things happen, and you see them from Lampedusa, and they're completely different as you can see them on your TV screen. So when you're there, it's like being behind the theater calls. Once we were there, and there were some Tunisians had come on a boat the night before. And what happens in Lampedusa, if you're in the middle of this network of associations that do things on the island, they called me and they said, why don't you come to the port, they're arriving. So there's another crazy group of people. They go there with tea and they just say, welcome, happy, welcome, because they think people that come off a ship need someone to smile to them. So they just smile to these kids. It's actually very moving and very nice. So I went, and these Tunisians, they didn't actually look like people who need any help. They were actually very grubby and sort of cross and angry, and they would say, give me some tea, and we were like, oh my God, these are not the migrants that we were waiting for. So we went back home thinking that was really strange. What's happening? So, of course, there's politics behind migration. So Tunisia wants to more money, or wants something else, or wants the routes to go somewhere else. So they will send the worst people to the island, so people get really anxious and say, oh, where are these people? And it's really, really complicated. And your ideas have to completely change. So anyway, they were on the island, and the mayor said something like, oh, we're really scared. And everybody got really sad. Oh, something's happening in Lampedusa. So every TV in Europe sent a journalist to Lampedusa with their camera, and it was full of cameramen and people. And we were sitting there, and it was full of tourists bathing. Everybody was super happy and having fun. And we were sitting in the bar, and these Tunisians came up with a thing saying, we are human. And I said to my friend Paula, what are they doing? And she started laughing, and she said, welcome to Lampedusa. And I said, but what's wrong? And then, so the story is this. If a TV sends someone to an island to do a piece on something, that man has to go back with a piece on something. So if you need it to be a scary thing, it has to be scary. So they paid these Tunisians to do a little manifestation that went around the island with this thing saying, we are human. They filmed it, they photographed it, and they sent it back to their TVs. So my mom phoned me and said, oh my God, what's happening? Are you really scared? And I said, no, I'm drinking spritz in the middle of a beach. There's actually nothing happening here. But of course, the story that got sent home was a story of lots of migrants stuck on an island and causing great damage. So the conflict is very open, and it's very, when you start working with migrants and migration, you get to know so many scary things, and also you change. You change, and you become someone who knows that we're not on the right plane, we're not on the right side, we have nothing to give, we're not the owners of the rights that we think we're giving. Those are people that are traveling. They want to go their own way. They don't care what we want them to do. When they run away from places where we put them, they're right. I mean, why would you want to stay in a place when you have to go and meet your cousin and he lives somewhere else and you get stuck in a place just because they give you a plate of pasta every day? I mean, it's a very complicated and complex thing, and Europe is in a very complicated place. And this project, in some way, very, very minor way, I mean, nothing great, but when you come to Lampedusa to a camp, you become aware of this. You sort of see that from the middle of the Mediterranean, things look very different, as you have different from what you had imagined them. So you go away with this consciousness of, maybe I shouldn't believe everything they say on the paper. Maybe I shouldn't look at all these images they're showing me on the TV. Maybe it's not the right thing to look at or to understand. And I mean, I'm quite happy to say that everyone that's come to Lampedusa has gone away with saying, I mean, you've sort of shattered all my ideas, but I'm out here now, and so it's a good place, I think, at least, up till now. This is one of the things that we did from the Library of Lampedusa, and it's a set for migrants, unaccompanied minors, and we went to a place where they had already reached a safe place and they were okay, and we asked the kids, what would you have liked to know before you left? Most of them said we would never have left it if we'd known the trip was so horrible. But now they've left, they can't go back, so they're like minors stuck in the middle of a place where you can't go back and you can't go forward. You don't know what you have to do, you're just desperate. The only thing they want to do is send money home. And to send money home, they have to work. And to work, they need a language. But they don't need a language to express themselves. They just need a language to find the work. So Michel Petit has a lovely talk about this and about finding a language that still can express your dreams and your hopes. Because if you can only say hungry, sleep, money, it's not a language. You're not a person anymore. You can't say what you feel. You can only say what you need. So most of them live in this sort of limbo where they don't have a language anymore. And books can help a lot in this case, because books express feelings and emotions and other things other than eating and sleeping and first needs for life. So these kids told us things that they would have wanted to know, like not everyone here is a military, policemen have different hats and what every hat meant, very, very practical stuff. So you can actually download it from that site up there, and it was nice to do that book. We learned lots of. It's not a book; it's a sort of booklet that you turn over. I had read a report from Save the Children, and these people said, "Oh, we work with migrants; they're on the move, and children don't want to stop in places, so they're very difficult to stop. And we give them things to read, but they'll throw them away. We can see they throw them away." So I knew this thing, so I asked this guy, what would it need for you for a thing? Why would you keep something? Could we put something in this book that you wouldn't throw away? And so this guy said to me, yeah, we don't like traveling with stuff. I mean, we're traveling, who cares about your papers, of course, but if the name of God was written on that thing, I couldn't throw it away. I would have to keep it. So I thought, wow, that's nice. So I said it to him, so we all learned this thing, and he said, okay, so we'll do this. And so on the first cover, you don't see it here, but on the first cover, it's the author of this booklet. I mean, we had the writer wrote something like, our land and sky and the God you believe in are all happy you're safe and alive. Something like that. I don't remember the exact words. So I said, so we sent it to, we did this with the ombudsman, is that what you say? I never say it in English. Ombudsman. Garante, with the person that's trying to save minors from the ombudsman. Is that what you say? Ombudsman. Yeah, that one. Of minors in Italy. And so we sent it to the office, and then we met with policemen, and we met with all of those institutions. And someone it wasn't a religious thing. I mean, it was like, but someone said, no way, we're not going to put the name of God on this thing. God is a word that we don't want to use in any way, and we don't have to put it on this thing. We don't want to do it. Actually, we don't. We're not going to do it. We're not going to publish it if it's going to be like that. So I said, who's in this room with us? No. So I said, okay, so I translated the English and the French and the Italian. But not the Arabic. So the Arabic stayed that way, but I don't think anyone could probably read it in Arabic. So that's the story. So after 5 years, we finally managed to open the library for kids in Lampedusa. We had a huge opening, and all that time that it made us really cross, because we would think, oh, why can't we do this thing? Why is everybody so terrible? What's going wrong? And there were I gave a talk in Mexico about projects that don't work, because I was so frustrated that I couldn't get to the end of opening a library, and after years of it. But actually this time made connection between us and the people in Lampedusa really strong. So it was a time that put roots, and now we're all friends and we already like each other, and we're actually, even if the library should shut down, we're all friends now. The humanitarian part of it is all gone through. So the library is open 2 times a week by volunteers, by kids. Some of the kids are volunteers, and if you ask them, they'll say we're all volunteers. So that's what the answer you get. And there's adults there, of course, that are super and that help us in every way. And things happen. So one year we were there for a camp, and there were lots of, because.
So can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
What do you mean by a camp?
So camps is a week when I say to everybody, whoever wants to come to Lampedusa, come in this week. And we get people from all over the Ibby world, and we get students, and of course you have to love children's books and books in some way. You don't have to do anything, it's just, you don't have to know how to do anything, you just do whatever you want to do. So last year Armin Greder came, he's an illustrator from Australia, and he lives in Lima now, and he's Swiss, exactly, and he's fantastic. And he came and he said to me, what can I do? And I said, he wrote a book called Ibby Ireland, another book called Mediterranean. They're very, very harsh books for grown-ups. I mean, it's very difficult to give them actually to small children. But he came and he was expecting crowds. He was expecting like classes and me making him do 100 things. And I just said, I mean, just sit down. And he said, well, what should I do? Where should I go? And I said, you know what? You just sit down, and when you look at the thing, when you've understood what's happening here and where you are and what's happening around you, you do whatever you want. I mean, you're the artist. Even if you don't do anything, I'm sure that this thing will stay in you, and you're an artist, and it will come out somewhere else, some other time, in some other book. I don't really care for you performing, because there's no need to perform in Lampedusa. So he was like, what? Really? I couldn't get him out of it. He didn't believe me. He was like, so he sat in the library for hours and hours, and one day he came to me and said, I understood what I want to do. So he did some little pictures on the walls of the library, but that's the minor thing. He went back to Lampedusa, and there's a cemetery in Lampedusa, and one of our friends gives a tour of the tombs, because she knows all the stories, but tombs of migrants are just white, because sometimes there's a name, if they knew a name, or if not, there's a symbol, but they don't know much. And every time people go to this guy around the cemetery, everybody comes back crying. It's really terrible stories. Anyway, Armin got it into himself that he was going to decorate the tombs of migrants. So he went back and he did the most fantastic work he'd ever seen. I mean, it's just so touching. He's not religious. He doesn't really believe in cult of death. He doesn't really understand cemeteries, but he drew the world backwards. He drew like seagulls and fish and animals of the sea on these tombs, and it's just so touching. It's unbelievable. So the 4th exhibition will have his illustrations as to follow the exhibition. Sometimes we have little pictures that people can print and put on the walls while the exhibition is on in their country. So this is Helen Limon, and lots of kids were on the island, and the volunteers got it into themselves that they wanted to teach them Italian. So they gave these Italian lessons. It was really strange. They would sit, I just look at them and make sure that nobody gets hurt, but I never say no or I mean, if it's not something that you can't absolutely do. But so they were sitting under these lamps, because the kids come out of this, there's a center in Lampedusa. It's a closed center, it's a sort of prison, but there's a hole in the net, and you get out of the hole in the net at night. You only go out of the hole in the net when you're sure you're not leaving. So if the sea is very rough, or it's something, you know that day you're not leaving, so you're going to stay on the island, so you might as well go out. So they came out at night, and they would sit under these trees and these lampposts and learn Italian with my volunteers of the Ibby camp. And Helen Limon is an extraordinary person, and she's an Ibby person too. And she came up to me the next day and she said, Deborah, I felt so wonderful last night. I went home, I'd been teaching Italian to this kid all night, and I said, Helen, you're in the right place, you're doing the right thing. And then she looked at me and she said, we're cowards. I said, what's that? And she said, Deborah, I don't even know Italian. How was I teaching it to a kid? I don't even know how to speak a word in Italian. And so I said, oh, well, yeah, why do we put ourselves in this position where we have to teach them something? And I said, I don't know, but I can't stop you, so I mean. And she said, why don't we have books here? Why don't we take the books to the street? So this might seem to you a simple thing, but we were working with kids and children, and it never occurred to us that we would work with adults too. So I said, genius. And the next morning we rounded up some books, we looked at them well, we found which were the ones that were easiest to take to the street, and the night after, this is what happened. So while the night before, I was teaching Italian to you, and you, poor kid, didn't know any Italian, you had to learn from me. Nevertheless, I didn't know any Italian to teach, but anyway, the thing was visible, it just slanted over and it became completely flat. So people were reading to each other. They were looking at books together without anything to say to each other because they didn't have any words. And they were looking at them and then crying and then hugging and then teaching each other their names and then saying hello on the street. And it was a completely different setting. And it was so extraordinary. And me and Julia and the other girls, they're in the group because I'm here talking, but there's obviously other people that work in this project with me. At dinner, we were saying, it works. We were like, if we won a championship or anything, nobody could understand, but we could because it was very emotional. It was like understanding finally silent books. You have to lean into them so much, and you have to understand so much about yourself when you're reading it with someone else that it makes you a friend immediately instead of being me, a refugee, and you, a person. And so the night after, the people were saying, oh, that kid that was reading with me, he knew 5 languages, I only know 2. And he was like, because they could say things in various places, and they actually met. So we actually saw that this book that they were reading was The Farmer and the Clown. It's a story about a farmer that meets a little clown. The farmer is very sort of stubborn and very solitary, and he meets this clown, and he doesn't really want to have anything to do with it, but he has to put up with it, so he takes him home. So the clown is all jumpy and very funny, and then it's a kid, very small child, and they go home, and it's time to go to bed. The clown has to wash his face, and once it's washed his face, he's not smiling anymore. He's very sad, actually. He's missing home, and so in that moment, the farmer understands that the clown is not happy as he was showing, and this boy that was reading with Helen told him, that's us. We have to smile. You won't stand our sadness. If we want to be helped, we have to be happy. So we pretend that we're happy. We pretend we're happy so that you will let us in some way. And when you understand our problem after, when we've met, we can actually tell ourselves a story, but we cannot do it before. And they connected with this story, and you would say it's a story for very small children. You wouldn't. So Helen built a whole thing on this story, and she's working on it, and she wrote things. You can find them on the internet, and it's a book that changed the perspective and showed us how much from books you can. If you have something in there, you can pull it out from a silent book because it doesn't have any other words to put in than yours. So look at it. You have it in the exhibition, so you can look at it. But to shatter your imagination, this is not what happens every day in Lampedusa. What happens every day in Lampedusa is normal library work. So children go in, they read books, there's lessons, we're trying to tutor some teachers, there's adults that get involved, and so they want to know things. There's extraordinary things that happen too. Sometimes when children pass through, their families might take them, and you might get these 2 kids coming in and just spending an afternoon with normal children, playing around and doing so. The focus of this, the Library of Lampedusa is not a library for migrants. So the Library of Lampedusa is a library, and it has to be open to everyone. And what's becoming very, very... I'm becoming very aware of the fact we cannot do things for migrants. We have to do things for people. Migrants are people like other people, and they have to be in the middle of everyone else. Things for migrants are starting to become our do-gooders thing. We have to separate them from the rest. We have to give them special things, but they don't need special things. They need to be considered. They are people, and we have to treat them like people. So the library of Lampedusa needs to be open for everyone, because if 2 kids appeared on the door and it was a library for migrants, what would we do? Just open the door and take all the dust off and just throw them in there by themselves, and it just doesn't have any sense. A life thing is a life thing for everyone. So this has happened in Lampedusa, and it was very nice and very emotional, and the kids had a super time for 3 or 4 afternoons in their trip. There's an artist in Lampedusa, and he's doing these pictures for us, and this idea that solidarity is becoming crime in Italy is more and more, we're more and more aware of it. So helping others is becoming more and more difficult, and migration is inside a structure of guards and policemen and people that are taking care of everything else. It's very difficult to meet a migrant or to have dinner with them or to treat them as people, because they are divided from us and they are a whole. We rarely know their names or where they come from. We always see them as. Has anyone of you seen a film called Terra Mare? Fuoco a Mare, sorry, you have. So that's a film done by a man that spent a year and a half in Lampedusa, and I didn't like it at all. I mean, it's a wonderful film. It's a wonderful, beautiful film about an island, but it's called a documentary, and it's not fair for the people of Lampedusa to call that a documentary. Like, children of Lampedusa know how to eat perfectly, and that kid, when you haven't seen the film, but you should go, and he eats his spaghetti very badly, and he sucks them all up, and everybody laughs. That's not he thought he was doing a comic thing for the man, and that film has this very difficult point. We see migrants for the whole film, but we don't know any of their names. We don't know where they come from. Nobody's given a name, and that's very bad. People have names, and we should say their names when we're filming them, when we're talking with them, when we're considering them. Because if you don't have a name, you're nothing. You're just a big amount of sadness, but we can't do anything. The film tells us there's so many of them arriving, and it's so dangerous, and it's so bad. We can't do anything. It leaves you with this impossible feeling of not being able to do anything for them. So, this is another thing that you can get from the Ibby website, and it's 10 tips that we wrote with Mariella Bertelli on how to set up a reading spot for silent books. Because silent books are dangerous for us, because they don't have words, and we can't lean on the narrative of words. So we have this empty place where we find ourselves, we open it, and we don't know what to do. So we have to be very familiar with silence. So you have to sort of try that out before you do it with children, because you might get stuck in a place where you say, oh God, what am I going to say? But you can also read silent books without saying a word, and that's very, very interesting, and you should try it if you're doing workshops with these books, because when you open a book and you read it together in silence, you've actually changed something, but you haven't said anything. And it's very interesting to know. You've been somewhere together and you both know a story now, but you haven't said a word between you. So everything passes through your eyes, your smiles, your breathing, and it's very, very intense. And that's a way you could try reading silent books. So this puts Ibby in the middle of everything, because books are still and will be a refugee for people. Books are a safe place for lots of people, and have been probably for all of us if we love books. Books are a place where you go and you can stay and you can go back to. So we did the exhibition in the Palazzo dell'Esposizione, and this guy did this fantastic installation where children could go inside the book and read it, and it was very nice. So that's about Ibby Counts, what I told you about. So these are, you might want to read, these are, I was telling someone today, but when people come to Ibby Camps, they're not famous anymore. So even if they were famous outside Lampedusa, I don't care if they're famous, because famous people are problems. So if you're famous and you want to be considered famous, don't come. Because for me, you're just a person. And if someone on the islands gets to know that you're famous, everybody wants to, all the schools want, because we go to the school and we meet the children in Lampedusa, and all the teachers says, is he famous? I want him in my class. But they don't really know why they're famous or whatever. So Miriam Moss came, and she wrote lots of books. I didn't even look her up. So I just said, oh, hi there, come in, do whatever you want. It was like, and she was very nice. And when she went away, she wrote a nice piece that you can find on the internet. And these are phrases from her piece. And then the other girls of the group were saying to me, that was Miriam Moss. We just even never recognized. Nobody said anything to her. She gave us her books, and she gave us lots of books. And I said, don't worry, nobody's famous here, so that's right. And Debbie Beeks is a researcher, and she came to the island too, and she was fabulous because she wrote this article, and she wrote everything that I wanted people to say about Lampedusa. Because I get very sort of concerned that people might come with the wrong idea and then go away thinking, I came here to help refugees, and where are they? But I can't make refugees up. So she found the part of the project that I'm very interested in. I like this idea that people are free, and you have to decide yourself what you want to do. So I just tell people where we have to be as Ibby, the appointments that we've made, and what we've said that we'll do. And then people sign up for what they want to do on their own. So you want to walk all morning, and you don't want to come to the library, you don't come. But you sign your name in a place where you want to go with someone else, people go together. So everybody comes back with this feedback, and they say, why didn't you tell me that we're going to do this? So I'd be organized. And I say, I don't want you to organize yourself. I want you to make something up for here. I want you to understand where you are and do something for this place, not just go on doing the thing that you're used to do at home because it's easier and people get very fascinated, and friendships they start working together and they learn what each other do, and it's very, very interesting. So the same after that, they say, yeah, you're right. If I'd organized my own thing, I wouldn't have leaned over to that person to help them because I'd had my own thing to do and I wouldn't. So that's mostly the thing about camps. And this is the library in Lampedusa. It's quite nice now. Before it was yellow and quite grubby, and now it's got a bathroom that works, and it's there in the middle of the Mediterranean. And for me, well, I'm quite involved in it, as you know, but for me, just the idea of thinking that in the middle of the Mediterranean there's a place where you can go and read a book, it just makes me smile, and I think that's the most important thing of the project. So thank you for listening, and if you have any other question, go for it now.
Thank you, Deborah Soria.
Soria, like Korea, easy. Yep.
Questions, thoughts? Debbie.
You talked about the centre of the little hole in the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So, does that mean that the two or the different groups are not supposed to meet? So the library is a sort of, I'm trying to say, a kind of informal gathering place.
Every country has its own way of working with migrants. So some countries have open camps where you can go in and do projects or say, it depends on how the camps are built. Italy has a system that's changing, always changing, but now in Lampedusa there's this hotspot place. So the migrants arrive and they're taken to this hotspot. It's in the middle of the island, a sort of depression in the middle. You can't see it. You wouldn't know where it is. And they get kept there. And usually they get kept there. They should be there less than 48 hours. But sometimes it's much more, and it depends on their political status, and it depends what type of migrants they are. It depends on what's happening in the country. It depends on 100 things. So, of course, you can't keep people closed in, and so this hole is there. It's always been there, and everybody knows about it. Yeah.
Is there a building? Is it an open space, or are there buildings? Or?
It's a building, yeah. It's a building that can have like 300 people in it. But like if they're on the island for more than some time, usually it catches fire and there's works on it, and it's always changing. You can never say really what happened. And I think now it's closed, but then when you go there, you say, "Is it closed?" No, it's open. There's 50 people there. I mean, it's a place. It's not a prison, but you can't go in there. If you ask permission to go in, you won't get it. Or if even the mayor of Lampedusa, if he wants to go inside the place, he has to ask permission in Sicily to the prefetto. The prefetto would say yes, but they'll tell the people that are in the centre, so anything that's wrong going on, it's crazy. It's like once, when you go to Lampedusa, they will tell you stories about before the criminalization of migration, and before the criminalization, just people would get there on a boat, and the people of Lampedusa would have to organize themselves and say, "Oh, do you have a place? Do you have something to eat? I've finished my fruit. Maybe you can help them." And so they built up a place in the next school, and they had this. They got money from the state, and they would give them food, but they were just free on the island. They would talk to them, and it was a completely different connection. Now it's not connected with the population at all.
Another question. So you say you're there for 48 hours or whatever length of time it might be longer. And then what happens and where do they move on to?
Everyone is different. Like, I was once talking to an anthropologist and we were talking about your rights. So borders are a place, before borders were very strict. This is my place, this is your place, this is the border. When you go through, you tell me who you are, I tell you what you can do. Borders are now very flexible. So before the border, if you don't let anyone in from Tunisia, the border is Tunisia. And when you come in now, you've got your own packet of rights. So if you're white, if you're brown, if you're blue, if you were traveling for economics, if you're running away, there's 1,000 different reasons and needs that you can have, and so with this packet of rights that you have, people can decide what they will let you do and what they won't let you do. But of course, it's a decision that's made by other people and made by politics and made by time and made by, depends. So say Italy doesn't want to let anyone in from Tunisia and you're Tunisian, you get stuck there for a lot of time because they don't know where to put you. But if you're from Syria, you may go through in a moment because that's what we decided. Not because it's you, but because it's who you represent. So, but we're all involved in this because, like, economical migration is considered really bad, really terrible. No, nobody should migrate for economics. Who wants people coming here and stealing our money? Well, what if you can't do anything in your country and you're just stranded there and you just want to go away because you don't have any future, you can't get married, you can't do anything, and you just decide you want to go somewhere else? You can't. Of course, if you look at the humanitarian part, this is it. So you have to decide who you are and what you want to do. Not mostly what you can. It might not happen to you in your life to meet or to have to actually do something for a migrant. It hasn't happened to me yet. I mean, I go to Lampedusa and I go there and I give them tea, but it hasn't happened to me to have to take a decision on my life about a migrant. But when it does happen to you, you sort of have to know how you're going to move. So you have to decide what are you going to do in some. And Lampedusa is the right place to understand more about yourself, to know if you're going to be up to a fight or if you understand the situation or if you don't. So it's happened to me most times, yes, that like, oh, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you want to go and help the kids on the boat, and you think, oh, do I really want to go? And then you think, yeah, I do want to go. So you get up and go and you think, that's what I do. But someone says, no, I don't want to go, and they don't go, and nobody judges the thing, and it's just understanding better who we are and where we come from and what we want to do or not.
Yes, we're all familiar with huge stories of various kinds in the media, but it's almost impossible from a distance to actually get a real feeling for reality, And I mean, look at the background when Merkel let in 2 million refugees into Germany. It was an economic decision because they needed more workers, actually, and the amount of people they took in more or less represented the deficit, right? And but other countries have the exact opposite, like unemployment and so on and so on. But if you had a magic wand, and what would the regime be if you had a magic wand?
Me? Oh
Yes.
God, don't give me a magic wand. That is really dangerous.
You're a super powerful person. What would the regime
No, you don't want to know that. I don't know. I mean, if I had a magic wand, people would be different to what they are. I mean, if I had a magic wand, there wouldn't be any borders. Who decided where the borders are and why they had to be there? I mean, people don't want to go to a place to work. People want to go to live. So you decide that 100,000 people should go to, Germany. Maybe they didn't want to go to Germany. Why are we deciding for them? these people are people. I mean, if I was to take a travel somewhere and someone was to say to me, "Oh, you want to go to Holland? No, let's go to France." I would say, you know what? I want to go to Holland. Just make your own business. It's the connection that we have with the people that is different. So migration is inevitable. We can't do anything about it. And the more you know about it, and the more horrible it gets. It's true. There's economics behind. There's horrible things that happen in Africa, and these people have to leave. The information they have from there when they leave is completely berserk. They think that Europe is a place where, I don't know, we swim around in gold, and they do leave for things that are unreal. So someone must have said those things. So when we talked to the kids, when we did that book, they said, we didn't know, we didn't think. They said, go to Europe, Europe's easy, go to Europe. And then when they get here, they don't understand why it's so different from the dream. They had someone told them the wrong thing. So it's very messy. I don't think a magic wand could actually make the difference between probably.
Would a certain percentage of them have been better off if they stayed where they were?
Lots. Some people, these kids travel for 4 years and they arrive here and they're 16. They've left when they were 12. I mean, what could you decide when you were 12? I couldn't decide anything, probably, just what I wanted for my lunch. But, I mean, they left. Some just leave because everybody's leaving, and why should I stay behind? Or yeah, the stories are, whatever. It's a story. When you hear it, you say, oh my God. And then what did you do? I went to Greece, and I tried crossing over 5 times, but they would always, because in Greece they close the ships and they don't let anyone off. They closed them in the bathrooms, and then when the ship went back, they would open the bathroom again and they could get off, but only in Greece. So he went up and down. He was super scared of dogs. Like, dogs made him really scared, and had these dogs all over him. He was like, and then he arrived. He managed to get through, and he met a man of his spoke his language. So put him on a train, and his train took him to Sicily. And when he was in Sicily, he slept with an old man. He said, very ticks. I don't know where he slept. It must have been a horrible place. And then finally someone told him, go to Mazzarino. And Mazzarino is this place in the middle of Sicily where this woman works. She's got a heart like a, I don't know, she's super. If I had a magic wand, everybody would be like her, because she's just fantastic, and she just takes them in. So he was very lucky. Someone told him, go to Mazzarino, they'll take you in there. So he arrived and knocked on the door, and Cettina, this friend of mine, said to him, come in, sit down, have a meal, tell me your story. And he told her the story, and she did all the paperwork, and now he's living there. But, you know, it's just kindness, life, I suppose. Problem is, if you get everybody gets very scared and angry. So the real war is about being scared. They're making you so scared. You wouldn't let anyone into your house. You'd think they'd kill you with a knife. And they might, because they're very scared too, and they're people, and people are people.
And yeah, any more questions? Okay, Debbie, last one. Oh, sorry.
Do any of them go back?
They
Why
can't.
do they have to go back?
They've been lent so much money to do the trip. They have to repay their money. The people that have lent them their money usually go to the families and say, we'll kill your sister if you don't send me money, we'll kill your... And they're just 16 or 17, and the only thing they want to do is send money back. They can't go back. Back is not an option.
It's a very sobering...
That's sad though, why do we have that?
No, thank you, Deborah. I mean, it's a very sobering and a very, it's a very in-depth picture, much more in-depth than we could know, that you have given us and painted for us. You've said that the challenge of silent books is that you've got to go inside yourself and know where you're coming from in order to be able to work with them, work with people. And the word humanitarian kept coming up all the time. Your talk is wonderful but very challenging. Thank you. Please.
Hope it was up all that.
No, please, can we thank Deborah Soria? Yes, we have a lot to think about. And again, in a way, you think about Ibby, that's what Ibby is about. This here. in this room tonight is what Ibby is about. It's what makes sense of the International Board on Books for Young People. And having said that, can I now call on Liz Page